Everyone knows that in the last few years, more and more people are meeting their significant other online. And why not? It's easy, fun, and exciting. But it doesn't always lead to a happily ever after. Today on Family Matters, what you need to know about internet dating. Thanks to the internet, it's incredibly easy to connect with people near and far without ever leaving your home. There are millions of people out there looking for romance, but you need to be cautious because not everyone you encounter online is the person they claim to be. Today, my guests will enlighten us about the best practices and pitfalls you should be aware of if you're going to look for a partner online. Our first guest is the Vice President of eHarmony, Grant Langston. Thank you, Grant, for being here today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Now, eHarmony is by far the largest internet dating website in the world, is it not?
We are neck and neck with a site called Match.com. We sort of fight over the world with them. So, yes.
Well, it's undisputably huge.
Very, very huge. That's
But if there's anybody out there that's living under a rock and has never heard of eHarmony, could you just tell us very briefly what service does eHarmony provide?
eHarmony is an online dating service for people that are interested in a long-term relationship or marriage, serious relationship. Before eHarmony started in 2000, there was online dating. Match, I believe, started in the mid-90s, but it was more about meeting someone for Saturday night, for hooking up. That's kind of what it was about. And so when I used to tell people, I'm working for this company or we're starting this company that does matching for serious relationships, they would laugh in my face because it seemed like such an absurd thing.
And then behind your back, they said you were a sleazeball.
Crazy. They would say, look, when people want to meet somebody for a date, they go online, and when they want to get married, they go to church or their Aunt Sally or whatever. Right. So eHarmony really pioneered the change in the way people use online dating.
And in the image.
Absolutely.
In the image. I have to tell you, you know, as a judge, I've been a judge 18 years. When I first started hearing about internet hookups, or the internet being used as a vehicle to meet people, it was always in a very negative way.
That's right.
It usually involved cheating, somebody being unfaithful.
That's right.
But in the last 5 years, we have seen a legitimization of online dating services as a way of meeting people who are high quality, permanent matches.
In fact, it's sort of flipping around in an interesting way. It used to be you went online for fun and then you went to the real world for serious, and it's sort of flipped around. When it's time to find a relationship that you want to last, people are saying, well, the place to do that is online. It's a company like eHarmony, that's the place that you want to go when you want to be compatible with someone for a long time. So the stigma is definitely going down.
And I should tell you, I have 2 colleagues of mine who are judges who met someone online and are in very happy long-term relationships. I met my own partner online, and so I can vouch that it actually works. But the whole process of writing a profile and trying to convey something meaningful about yourself that will make another person intrigued enough to want to meet you is quite an exercise.
It's very difficult, mostly because we don't do it. The day you sit down to write your profile is typically the first day you've ever thought about how to present yourself to the world. There are a lot of ways to do it wrong. There are a lot of ways to be boring. There are a lot of ways to be too detailed. It's definitely a thing that you have to learn how to do, and we've worked hard to help people with various articles and things get the skill set that they need to do it.
And you have to put a photograph if you are serious about this, don't you?
That's right. No one's going to take you seriously if you're not willing to put yourself out there with a photograph. And look,
I think that's the most embarrassing part of the whole thing.
it could be, right? But also, it could be your moment to sort of shine and be who you are in your best way. People make a lot of silly mistakes. They will use the webcam on their computer and take a picture of themselves under fluorescent lights so that they look like a zombie. Not a good idea. Go outside, go into the green, have a friend take a picture of you in an outfit that you would wear on a date. It doesn't take a lot to put your best foot forward, but you just have to be conscious of doing it the right way.
But there's an embarrassment factor in putting your identity out there. I mean, most people don't put their names. Is that correct? You use a screen name.
Well, in our case, we require you to use your real first name, but there are definitely sites that allow you to use screen names.
But you don't know whether the person's really using their real name.
That's right.
So you could choose a different name, but when you put your face out there, the thought that other people that you know may see you on an internet dating site can be embarrassing. But I think it's worth remembering that this is now the mainstream way that people meet.
In the last year, about 30% of all marriages occurred online. Now, that's astounding.
That people met online.
30% of all marriages met online. 10 years ago, it was pretty close to zero. When we started, it was pretty close to zero, and that shows the shift that you're talking about, where people who are serious about a relationship are now going to a place where they feel that they can vet people, that they can get someone that's very compatible with them.
All right, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more with the Vice President of eHarmony after this. Welcome back to our discussion of internet dating with Vice President of eHarmony, Grant Langston. Grant, we talked about creating a profile, putting your photo up. Let's assume that someone intriguing sends you a message saying, "Hi,
Right.
I'd like to meet you." Some people email endlessly before they actually meet.
Right. Well, you know, we're not in the pen pal business, and we try and help people understand that you're not after a pen pal. And there's a part of relationships that eHarmony doesn't match on, and that's chemistry. You're never going to know if you have chemistry with someone till you sit down across a table with them and talk to them for a while.
Right.
So we want people to feel comfortable before they meet, but we want that to happen quickly. I think the quicker you can feel comfortable and take it offline, the quicker you're going to know who you're dealing with, if you like the person, if you're wasting your time, and what you're after is a real relationship, right? You don't want to swap emails for months and months. So we really try and push that process to happen as quickly as people can stand to do it.
So what's the ideal first date? What do you recommend?
Well, we think that lunch is a great first date because it has a defined time. And even if you really don't like the person very much, you can be nice for an hour and then you have a reason to go back to work.
What about coffee?
Coffee's great too. Coffee's inexpensive, and that's a good thing. It is a little weird to have a very expensive first date because it tends to put some pressure on both people. It's formal a lot of times, and you just want to talk. You also don't want to go to a movie or something where you're going to sit next to the person and stare at a screen.
No.
You want to talk to them. Having it be for a defined time is best, and you also want to watch how much you drink. A lot of times people are nervous and they'll just order drinks, and that, of course, is not good for anybody.
Well, I'll tell you, I sensed that when I did it, these are not really dates, they're interviews. You're trying to figure out if the person you're sitting in front of is who they said they were.
Right.
Do you, and I'm sure you're very aware that, you know, the internet creates the possibility of creating a complete backstory, an identity that bears no resemblance to reality.
That's absolutely true. And, you know, we have taken to advising people when they meet their person, when they know their name and they see them, Google them. Takes 5 minutes and put their name into Google and see what comes up.
So that's one good thing to do.
It's just an extra layer of comfort that you get by learning the person is who they say they are.
But you can't find out from Google necessarily whether they've got a criminal record or whether they're married, whether they owe a lot of child support arrears, whether they've ever been bankrupt.
Right.
It is not easy to know whether the person is who they say they are. And sometimes that chemistry you talked about is purely physical.
Yeah.
There's a strong attraction there. You want the person to be the right one. You have expectations and hopes, and your judgment can get clouded. I'm not speaking from personal experience. I got lucky, but I know people who have had horror stories.
That's true. It's true. We have an entire department in eHarmony that's called Trust and Safety, and it's about helping our users be smart and dealing with people who report incidents. Now,
So a person can report to you? For example, I could write you and say, I went on a date with somebody, they said they were single, but I found out they were married.
absolutely, we'll close their account, and notifications go out to all their matches that this person has been taken off the site. So you can contact us at any time, even when you haven't met the person yet, and say, you know what, something doesn't seem right about this person. We work as hard as we can to make sure that it's a good experience, but it's really about how cautious you are as the user. And that's one of the things we don't ever want to water down. We don't ever want to say to you, oh, we vouch for this guy or this woman. We know that they're all fine, because that might have you sort of drop your guard a little bit. You should be cautious. Of course, the great likelihood is that the person is exactly who they say they are, but just use your common sense. And I think in most cases, that protects you.
Well, you've said that 30% of all marriages are couples who met online.
Yeah.
And what about eHarmony? Do you have stats for how many people ended up in long-term relationships?
Yes, we have done quite a bit of research into this. So far, we have about 565,000 marriages. That goes back to 2004, I believe.
How many divorces?
Well, we don't know, but the divorce rate is lower than certainly our competition and typically than the average. That all breaks down to about 5% of all U.S. marriages. And it's pretty remarkable to me to think that we started this little company in Pasadena, California, in a little psychologist suite. My first office was in a broom closet, and it's kind of blossomed into this thing that has helped so many people.
To the point that 5% of all marriages in the United States were couples who met on eHarmony.
That's right. That's right. And
That
of course,
is remarkable.
when you go into our office, the walls are covered with pictures of couples and their children, and it's pretty satisfying to know that you had a part in making that happen.
It is, and I think that in a world where everybody's so busy, and it gets harder to meet people if you don't have a lot of friends who can introduce you to people that are single, and if you're not the type to go to the bars, this is a real option that's very viable.
One thing that is absolutely true for almost everyone, the pool of available candidates, starting from when you're in college, it shrinks the older you get.
Right.
And if you don't do anything about it, if you just date in the normal way, the pool of people is going to get smaller and smaller. And that's certainly something that eHarmony's helped people with, a large pool of well-qualified people. That's helpful just on its own.
Well, there you have it. I think if you use a service like that intelligently and keep your brain working, you can be very successful and maybe have a little adventure and love in your life. Thank you, Grant, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will go in chambers with lawyer Andrew Feldstein. Stay with us. We're in chambers with family law lawyer Andrew Feldstein. Andrew, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know that huge numbers of people are meeting online and embarking on romantic relationships without really knowing a whole lot about each other. Is there a way to do background checks on someone so that you know whether they are who they say they are online?
Well, there's different ways that you may be able to do it, and it can depend on where you live. You could decide to try and search on court files in your jurisdiction to see if they've been sued, see if they have child support arrears, see if they've gone bankrupt. You may even want to just do things as simple as doing Google searches on the name, Facebook searches on the name, because if they've done something untoward to other people, they may be doing it again, and something will come up about their name.
You know, in my experience in court, I see with increasing frequency people coming to court saying that the person that they were involved with was not at all the person that they thought they were, that this person has a criminal record, they've been bankrupt. Are there ways to find out about that?
Well, you can certainly search in most jurisdictions to see if somebody's been bankrupt. A criminal search can be harder because that can be considered confidential in some jurisdictions, but in other places you might be able to search it. In my opinion, it's a good idea. You may want to even hire a private investigator to find out.
Now, that would be really expensive, and probably most people don't do it. But I did want to ask you about something like a criminal record check or even a police records check. Would you need their consent before you could get those records?
I believe it depends on the jurisdiction you're in. Where I practice law, you would need their consent, and that's a difficult thing to ask somebody, to say to them, by the way, I want to do a criminal background check on you before we move in together.
Do you think it's a good idea to go and see a lawyer if you're thinking about living with somebody that you may not know that well, but you think you know them?
Well, first of all, a marriage contract or a cohabitation agreement or a prenup is always, in my mind, a good idea to seriously consider. But I think you also have to be very practical. Before you let somebody move in with you, even if you don't have any assets you want to protect, you really need to make sure you know the person. And if you meet somebody online and you're having them move into your home 2 or 3 months later and you've only met them twice, is that really such a smart decision to make?
Well, I see people, I'm sure you have too, that had long relationships. But when I say long, I say like almost a year online with Skype. They're Skyping every day. They feel they know each other very well. And really, it turns out that they didn't. That, in particular, people who want to be sponsored. They're living in a country, they want to get into North America, and they need somebody to marry them to sponsor them. I see that a lot. Do you?
I've seen that on occasion where people are wanting to leave one spouse for somebody they've met online. But I always say to somebody, it's a very dangerous thing to do, because even if you are talking to them for half an hour every day, how do you really know who this person is? And then you've sponsored them and you're financially obligated to support them. You can't just say the relationship didn't work, I'm not going to comply with my sponsorship. You're stuck and you may be paying for a long time.
And I think people really need to understand that if you sponsor somebody, you've guaranteed to the government that you're going to support them, that they're not going to be on public assistance, and that if the relationship doesn't work out, it's not an excuse to say, well, they only used me to get into this country.
Absolutely correct. And the challenge people are facing is that they romanticize this relationship that they've developed online, and it's not reality. It's no different than if you think when you're with your spouse and you dated them initially, it was all excitement and fun. Then you find out it's something different when you live with them. But at least when you've met somebody where you live and you've spent time with them, it's a lot better than just a half an hour a day online or Skype.
I think there's so much loneliness out there, and the internet provides such a smorgasbord of opportunity to connect with people that are worlds apart, that it's really changed the way people form relationships. And you mentioned the way they end relationships. You've had clients come to you who want to leave their spouse for somebody they've met online.
Yes, I've seen people who have spouses and children and long-term relationships, and they want to leave their relationship for someone in a different country who's 20 years younger than them. And I try to caution them, do you really think that this love that this 20-year-old is showing for a 40-year-old woman is truthful and honest, or do you think they look at it as an economic opportunity?
But how can you know? I mean, do they bring this person with them for you to meet?
They don't bring them with to meet, but I try to say to them, think common sense and ask yourself this question. If your best friend or sister came to you and told you the exact same facts you were telling me, what would you tell them? And every time I've said that to somebody, they say they shouldn't go forward with the relationship.
So does it work? Do you get through?
Sometimes you don't know, because you may only meet the person once and then they may not divorce, or maybe they didn't hire you, but you hope that you get through sometimes.
And if they do decide to embark on a relationship, what kinds of things would you put in a prenup, a prenuptial agreement, a cohabitation agreement?
Well, you'd want to protect them from support, but the problem is they're signing a sponsorship agreement. So the sponsorship agreement itself is contradictory with the marriage contract.
Well, we know
if
if they've guaranteed to the government they're going to support this person, they're going to. But what if they're from here and there's no immigration issue? What would you put in a prenup?
Well, you have to look at the example of the case you have in front of you. Ideally, you want to limit the exposure for support, but an agreement also has to be fair. You can't
But don't
make
they
an
have to
agreement
disclose
unfair.
everything they own?
Absolutely. You're going to have to give complete financial disclosure of all your assets, your income, your liabilities, everything. And sometimes people say they don't want to do it. And when they say they don't want to do it, I would tell someone they might as well not do the contract, because the odds of the contract being upheld will be slim to none. And I also tell them the contract can't be unfair.
And even if, well, that's what I was going to ask you, even if you've disclosed everything you own, is a court going to uphold a contract that says, look, if we break up, you get nothing?
I think it depends on the fact pattern. If you're going to say to me, they've been together 20 years and somebody gave up a job and raised kids and stayed home to raise kids, and then one spouse says to the other, okay, you get nothing, I don't think any court in the land is going to uphold that contract. If that contract is signed that says they get nothing, but the marriage breaks down 6 months later, well, the court might uphold that contract.
But the key is to be fair and not try to take advantage of either your situation or theirs.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, maybe the relationship, at least you've protected yourself in case the relationship doesn't work.
I would say to people, you've protected yourself the best that you can, but it's not perfect because contracts can be set aside.
Cautionary words from a very smart lawyer. Hope you were all listening. Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Lauren McLean. Today on Q&A, our question is, how do I know if I'm living in a marriage-like relationship? The dramatic increase in unmarried couples living together has led to expanded spousal support and property division rights for unmarried persons who live together for a set period of time, such as 2 years or less if a child's born. The financial stakes are high, and people often disagree over how committed their relationship was and when it ended and started. You may be in a relationship that's marriage-like, that justifies support and property rights if you live, eat, and sleep together, if you share household duties and services, buy gifts for each other, go on outings and trips together, have children together, or even raise your partner's stepchildren, holding yourself out as a couple at family and public social functions, owning joint financial assets and making joint contributions, depending on each other financially, all can lead to the court's finding that you are in a marriage-like relationship. There's huge dollars at stake at the end of these relationships, so see a lawyer.
Thanks for watching. For extended interviews and exclusive content, please visit our website at familymatterstv.com. If you'd like to submit your legal question to our Q&A, go to advicing.com. I'm Justice Harvey Brownstone. See you next time.